What Fallout has meant to me. My first experiences with the legendary Fallout series was seeing a Game of the Year edition for sale at the local electronics store and decided to pick it up. This was back in 2010, and looking back, not knowing much of the game at the time, let alone the series and lore, I would have never guessed this game could have had the potential of sparking an intrigue and flat-out love for a game series that I have spent countless hours of my own life vicariously living another life simultaneously within a sprawling, living, breathing, post-apocalyptic world. I remember reading tidbits about Fallout 3 in some long-forgotten video game magazine back when there were still multiple physical magazines in circulation, not like today, where the video game magazine is rare and all info is usually ascertained via the World Wide Web. Having played Bethesda's Morrowind, I looked at the box and thought, could gun-based, essentially first-person shooting actually work and feel like a role-playing game? I honestly did not buy Fallout because I knew loads of info on it, nor because the back of the box caught my attention. It was quite simply the fact that it was on sale, and very, very cheap for that matter. So I took this little humble game home and popped it in my old Xbox and fired it up for the very first time ever. From those first sparks on the transistor tubes and hearing the now iconic song, I started to get that feeling I was about to experience something special.
I don't want to set the world on fire. I just want to start a flame in your heart.
That intro perfectly set the tone for me, and as the camera slowly zoomed out to reveal the crumbles of Washington, D.C., I knew I was indeed in for something special. But one thing I didn't know and would have never guessed was that this series would continue to be a part of my life after so many years. I guess you could say I fell in love with Fallout within the first minute or two, and from there on, this series has always captured my imagination, managing to keep me engaged in a world that feels like a home away from home. And to this day, I continue to exist not only within this physical realm, but also within a post-apocalyptic world where I can do pretty much whatever my little heart desires. After spending hundreds of hours within Fallout 3, I knew I had to get my hands on the follow-up game in the series, Fallout New Vegas. Unlike Fallout 3 though, I picked up the base vanilla version of New Vegas, having purchased the game a few months out of its initial release date in October of 2010. And at that point, all of its add-ons were still separate and available as DLC content from Xbox Live. So those are my first two experiences with Fallout, together very close in my timeline, making my memories of the first initial few years with the games seem like one massive world where I could explore on different places throughout the wasteland. I knew I would love New Vegas because at that point Fallout 3 had pulled me into their world, and as long as I could get that core wasteland experience, I knew everything was gonna be A-OK. And that leads us into Fallout 4, seemingly the most polarizing of the modern-day Fallout series. I can understand some people's gripes with the game, but to me, it feels like how the older Fallout games felt to me at the time, and that is one of the most important parts for a series to continue to flourish within the affectional section of the nostalgic part of my brain. I waited 2 years after Fallout 4's initial release to actually play it. Not because I didn't want to, it was because I was a couple years late to the whole next generation gaming house party. Now, after being able to digest the game and also learn the in and outs of the modding scene, I am comfortable to say Fallout 4 is my favorite of the series. Now, before you jump out of your chair and start yelling at me, let me explain. Fallout 3 would have to be my top pick when it comes to overall nostalgia for the series. Fallout New Vegas would be my pick for overall favorite Fallout game from the last generation of consoles. The reason for this is it felt to me at least like the next evolution of Fallout. The graphics seemed sharper, the gameplay felt tighter. The shooting felt more like a natural mechanic, and definitely not as rigid as Fallout 3. And Fallout 4 would be my pick for my overall favorite. The reasons why are similar to New Vegas. To me, Fallout 4 feels like the perfect evolution, simply building and expanding on an already decent base structure. So here I am, 7 pages in, and I have barely covered what Fallout has meant to me. This series has been an escape for me, a refuge to disconnect myself from the mundane dribble we are forced to interact with on a day-to-day basis. Another world, ironically less beautiful than our own. But this is a realm where the imagination is free to roam, unconstrained by the guidelines placed in motion within our own real world. This series has meant a form of freedom to me, a safe haven from the strangeness of reality, a way for me to say, what would I do if society collapsed? For good or bad, love it or hate it, it is undeniable Fallout has impacted millions. And I have a sneaky suspicion that I'm not the only one who has feelings like this. With all that said, it is quite simply the reason I love Fallout and the other Bethesda role-playing games. Sure, they're not perfect. Sure, they have bugs and other things for people to pick on. But at the end of the day, I can lose myself in these games, and to me, that is the mark of genius game design. If you have not experienced these games in a similar fashion, I hope that it's just not the time for you yet to experience what I have. And perhaps one day your love and experience for Fallout will exceed my own. So thank you for checking this out. And of course, thank you Obsidian, and thank you Bethesda.